10 seconds.
Recording in progress. Recording in progress.
It looks like we're on.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Good evening. Welcome to the February 12th, 2025 meeting of the Town of Southampton Conservation Board. In accordance with the Town Board's adoption of local law number 14 of 2022, the board's meetings are being held both in person at Town Hall and via video conference through Zoom webinar. The link to participate in this meeting via video conference can be found on the town's website at the town clerk's agendas and meetings portal. You can also watch the live stream video and submit written comments for the public record through the town website. If you are attending via Zoom and wish to speak during this meeting, then please click the raise hand icon. As a reminder to all applicants, agents, and members of the public who wish to speak at the meeting, please state your name and hamlet of residence for the record. Thank you. I invite everyone to rise for the salute to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
What is your pleasure on the minutes of December 18th, 2024?
Motion to accept.
All in favor? Opposed? January 8th, 2025, we do not have the right mix of people to vote on them. So we'll go to the January 22nd, 2025. What is your pleasure on those minutes?
Motion to accept.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearings, WB 24001, Foreign Favid. Applicant requests adjournment to March 26, 2025. Is there anyone on Zoom who would like to speak on this application? Anyone in the public who would like to speak on this application? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? A 021093, 134 Sand Dune SA and adjoining lots for the village of Sagaponic.
I recuse myself from this one.
Yes. And we still have a quorum, so. The last time we heard this, we went over some things and we asked you to consider some other alternatives. Do you have anything to? Sure, come on up.
Good evening, everyone. Brant Reiner from Nelson Pope and Voorhees here on behalf of the applicant. I'm also here tonight with Frank Haftoll, who is a representative of the owner. Last hearing was in December 2024 on this, and we went through a lot of things that I hope we don't have to rehash tonight. I know this board is not one to go backwards, so we would like to continue to march forward. Just to go through a couple of checklist items based upon some of the questions that were open-ended last hearing. There was a question about the trail that is currently existing and will continue to exist. That is part of the subdivision. That's for the residents of that subdivision and will continue to be accessible to them. There was a question about the lot size of the vacant lot. Again, these are 3 parcels, and these maps, just again, the line's not showing up properly, but these are 3 separate single and separate lots. This one here, furthest to the west, is a vacant lot and will continue to remain in its vacancy with natural vegetation. That lot size is 28,233 square feet, roughly a half an acre. There's also a question about the elevation between the grade the natural grade and the proposed first floor elevation. The grade is somewhere between 6 and 8 feet where the house is proposed to be built. And the first floor elevation being proposed is 20.5 feet. So there's roughly a 12 to 14 foot separation from grade to the first floor elevation. Those were the three open-ended things that I had to make note of. If there's any other questions, I can stop now and we can go through those other open-ended questions. But really, this board asked us to look at alternative designs. We did discuss the idea of having already explored practical alternatives, and I can get to that in a second. But specifically, this board asked us to consider taking everything that is currently proposed seaward of the coastal erosion hazard line and push it to the landward side of the coastal erosion hazard line, falling in line with the design that we currently have. So we did study that at length with the design team, and the owner had given it serious consideration. And ultimately, between the design team and the owner, they could not come to an agreement on making that work. So I'm here tonight to explain to you that the owner would like to stay with this design that he has been proposing, and ask the board to consider the mitigation that we talked about previously. I can quickly go through that if the board would like a reminder. Again, I don't want to waste anyone's time. It's been a while, it's been 2 months since we talked about this. Very quickly, the idea is that we're reducing density here from 2 single family dwellings down to 1. We're creating a much better situation in terms of setbacks. We're creating a massive amount of buffering. We are pulling things back. The pink is existing, blue is proposed. You can see there is a retreat away from the ocean, a retreat away from the dune setbacks, the retreat away from the wetlands, trying to buffer as much as we possibly can. And then I would just also like to remind the board that we recognize that we cannot meet the standards, and it's usually my goal. Doing this 22 years, I try to push to get the standards where we can. Given the constraints that we're surrounded by, it's really difficult to do that. This map is not up here, but you have it in your files. It shows that there's a very small conforming building envelope that squeezes everything right into this point right here. So meeting the standards is just not practical. Looking at the practical alternatives, we explored the idea of taking the house and pushing it into a 2-story envelope. Right now it's currently a 1-story house, and the idea is because the house has to be so high off the ground that we have height limitations and pyramid law. And the owner just felt that putting a 2-story house up that high was going to have a very negative visual impact for himself and for the neighborhood in general. So if we were to continue to explore that 2-story house by shrinking the footprint, we would need a variance from the village, and they can be tricky to get. So it does create somewhat more of a hardship. I would ask the board to just give me the courtesy of quickly running through this Village of Sagaponack Code 255-10D, which gives the board the ability to weigh each project that cannot meet the standards on its own merits, so long as the following are addressed. It says, the approving authority may consider imposing less than recommended setbacks if the approving authority determines that the applicant has demonstrated the following. There's A, B, C, and D. A talks about a buffer within an overall average width equivalent to the minimum required buffer zone. This project actually gives you more of a buffer than what would be required by your standards. The proposed work and location will not impair the capacity of the wetlands and buffer to provide essential wildlife habitat characteristics. And it goes on to continue about screening and migratory habitat, as well as essential corridors and connective functions. This buffer that's being proposed right here, you see it in all the green, creates a nice corridor for wildlife to be able to utilize everything around the property, accessing both water bodies that are surrounding the property. We feel as though we address that standard. The proposed work and location will not impair wetlands and surface water quality by incorporating erosion, sedimentation, and runoff controls to minimize non-point source pollution. This project is designed with all of those things in mind. All of the impervious surfaces will have stormwater capture. The sanitary upgrade is an IA system to denitrify the wastewater where you currently have antiquated systems, 2 of them, that are probably very close to groundwater. One of the systems is actually pretty close to the wetlands. It's right here. So you've got 2 systems. We're condensing to 1 that will be much further away from the wetlands. Mitigating measures shall be implemented that contribute to the protection and enhancement of wetlands and wetland benefits. Again, I think that really is, the idea is reducing density, creating an opportunity for this lot that's currently developed right here to no longer be developed as a single and separate lot, and for this pool to go away in perpetuity, whereas if it were to continue to be in its own single and separate lot status, somebody could come in and simply just refurbish that pool and continue to have it so closely located to the wetlands. So again, the standards the variance standards look at the practical alternatives, which we discussed, and these 4 criteria, and I think we do address them. So with that being said, I would also ask the board to consider granting a permit with a condition that acknowledges section 42-24 of the Sagaponack Village Code, which states that the village ZBA has the authority to approve requests for variances from chapter 42 regulations. So I'd ask you to consider issuing the wetland permit conditioned upon a village ZBA variance for relief from the CHA regulations. So all these improvements that were part of the driving concerns for this board, in addition to others that you had, could be addressed through the Sagaponack Village ZBA. So, did you have anything else to add, Frank?
No, that's our question.
Yeah, with that, I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
I'm sure we'll have questions from the board, but before we do, I'd like Maury to give a statement.
Good evening, Mark Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. I was not prepared to give a lengthy presentation tonight because the applicant indicated that they were not presenting any new information that I needed to consider. That being said, it does appear that the applicant is just providing a summation of some of the issues that he had discussed previously. As you know, as part of the record, I have a very lengthy technical advisory report that had recommended that this application be denied and provided considerable justification for that. While that report was prepared in response to the initial application and some changes were made to the project plan, certainly those modifications are not sufficient to address the overriding concerns both raised by that technical advisory report and by my testimony at the prior hearing. The applicant spoke quite a lot about mitigation measures for wetland impacts. What was lost by his discussion, and which my reports and testimony spoke to, is that we are not only looking to maximize buffers and setbacks from the westerly wetlands, but the history of Conservation Board approvals shows that there were historic wetlands in the northeast corner of the most easterly property. And this board had, pursuant to prior permits, not only required that those wetlands that were considerable be preserved, but that an ample buffer be protected as well. I think the buffer that the board had required, and that was depicted on former approved surveys, I believe was 50 feet in width. Certainly that information is contained in my advisory report. So while I offered both within my report and as part of my prior testimony that it would be more beneficial to utilize that area of lost historic wetlands for development today, we still have to factor in that significant loss of wetlands when we look to come up with the most environmentally responsive redevelopment plan for this property. No matter how many times I reconsider the plans that are before you, I see that there are yet significant practicable alternatives that need to be explored, both in the interest of lessening the extent of relief that the applicant is seeking from wetland construction setbacks and buffer setbacks, as well as to ensure that all new development is landward of the coastal erosion hazard area. As the applicant is indicating tonight that they have no interest in giving further consideration to practicable alternatives as required by section 325-9 of the code. I would recommend that the hearing be closed tonight, and I would
225.
I'm sorry.
Second part of code 225.
225. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, 225 is the village wetlands law. Thank you. But the village wetland law is modeled after the town wetland law, which requires that practicable alternatives be explored in the interest of maximizing setbacks. It requires that the applicant clearly demonstrate that there are no other practicable alternatives that would result in less impact, and I don't believe that the applicant has shown that to the board. As the applicant has made clear that the landowner has no interest in giving further consideration to practical alternatives, and as discussed at the prior hearing, clearly there's an ability to further scale back the extent of construction. I would recommend that the hearing be closed tonight, and I would recommend that this application be denied without prejudice, giving the applicant the opportunity, if so desired, to come back with a second application that puts forward a further redesign of the redevelopment plan. Beyond that, as there is considerable testimony on record, and as indicated, I have a quite lengthy technical advisory report on record that supports denial. Unless the board sees fit, I don't see a need to provide a summation of those issues again and concerns tonight. Thank you.
I know you have questions, or I hope you might have some questions. I just would like to remind the board that the practical alternatives analysis was fairly well discussed last time. There was some differing of opinions, but what it boils down to is the three options that we identified were rebuilding the lots as single and separate lots, which I think we would all agree that is not beneficial for the natural environment that we're trying to protect here. Secondly was, looking at taking the house, converting it to a 2-story house that can maintain the square footage that the property owner so desires to build here. Having purchased 3 lots, would like to, build a sizable house to make up for that kind of investment. And we talked about the difficulties of that in terms of its aesthetic natures and height variances that could be challenging to secure. And then finally is the overall shrinking of the program, looking at reducing the size of the pool and the decks and the house all together or individually. Really what then happens is, as we do that and we shrink this blue down to a smaller place, we now have a vacant lot, which we're going to maintain as a vacant lot, as it's absorbed into the 3-lot merger. Then you have this lot's currently developed as a single-family developable lot. And as we merge these and we shrink this down to reduce it into this smaller, more conforming envelope here, again, what we're left with is a sterilization of a currently recognized developable lot. And in the village of Sagaponack, the investment on that kind of property is pretty significant. So being forced to push everything into that smaller envelope does create a financial question in terms of the viability of it. So again, those are the practicable alternatives that we looked at. And given the mitigation that's being offered with this project, again, upgrades of sanitary and expansive corridors and connectivity and overall sterilization of areas to protect these valuable wetland pockets, and moving back, albeit not able to get back behind the coastal erosion hazard area, we do feel that it's worthy of a consideration for this board to consider the variances that are needed. Sorry if that was long-winded.
So the westerlymost lot, what rights remain on that lot?
This vacant lot,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of developability,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's any.
None.
The upgraded septic system, the AI, we do not consider as mitigation that is required by county and town code. I presume village code. All new construction has the IA system, so we don't consider that as mitigation. That will happen no matter what happens on the property, no matter what is built on the property, whatever size house. Don't think you can construe that because you're merging 2 lots, you can go outside the code and can justify that. And then there's that whole issue of wetlands in the corner that has not been addressed, that happened sometime prior to your client purchasing it. I look at that and I see a very big house, essentially on top of the dune, not meeting the setbacks, and wondering what the problem is. There's a lot of space there. I don't understand why you can't look at alternatives and come into a complying location. Marty doesn't recommend denial lightly. It's very rare and quite serious because there's a lot at stake. So I guess what I'm getting at is, I'm not sure I'm convinced yet about your argument of why you need to have that layout. I just throw that out there. Other board members can comment too. It seems to me there's a lot of space there and a lot of possibilities. I haven't seen much flexibility in your presentations.
Can I just offer one response to that. Marty's report is very thorough, as usual, and it does recognize concessions that have been made. And I would just like this board to understand that this is not the first plan that was thrown at this project. This is a revision based upon Marty's comments and the property owner making some concessions. And then finally, I don't mean to continue to dwell on this, but I said not we, that the property owner is removing density from a property, which is a reduction of nitrogen loading that's going into our surface waters and our groundwaters. So that is something that I would ask this board to not take lightly, because otherwise left to be as they are, you will have two nitrogen depositing systems in here, even if they are IA systems. You will have two fertilized lawns. You will have two swimming pools. You will have, a better potential for adverse impacts than what this product is proposing. So sorry, but I'll leave it at that for right now. Marty.
We hear that argument a lot with such merger applications, but it's hard for me to put numbers on that and put that in context when I see such a huge house. If you were to redevelop using that same house, I don't think you could do that on both lots. I think you've got a house that's less than 2 times the size, or nearly. If you look at to maximize the house on those 2 properties, I don't know that you would double the size of that house. So I don't know that we are doubling the nitrogen loading. As far as fertilized lawns, anything in our jurisdiction, we're not going to allow that to happen.
Well, outside of your wetland buffer, people do use fertilized, vegetation and lawns. That is within your jurisdiction, and it's not uncommon for people to have manicured landscaping outside of the established buffer area. That's all I was getting at. I wasn't saying there was going to be
our
big
jurisdiction extends 200 feet, and we work to limit the amount of nitrogen that is added.
Sorry, I'm just paging through here. We did submit an analysis of what the existing and proposed coverages look like in terms of square footages, and looks like the existing buildings are 8,500 square feet. These are broken down by areas. South of the coastal erosion hazard line, 100-foot wetland setbacks. I thought there was a table. There is. Sorry, let me just find it. So the existing FAR, floor area, is 8,617 square feet for the 2 houses. What's being proposed, the numbers that I have here, is 7,445 square feet. And then there's overhangs that account for another 1,400 square feet. So the numbers are very, very close to one another. They're within 100 or so, 150 square feet, existing and proposed. And then the allowable GFA for these 2 lots is 10,187 square feet. And again, those numbers are broken down for you in the submission package that we provided previously.
Is that allowable number based on the size of the structure meeting the setbacks?
The wetland standards?
Yes.
No. Again, the wetland standards are pretty significant. To squeeze the house and everything into the entire wetland setbacks. Here's the 100-foot setback right here. Everything would have to be in this area, and then the side yard setback requirement is right here. So it gets pretty tight. You maybe if you got really creative and had very irregularly shaped walls. You could probably squeeze that all in there, but again, it'd have to be 2 stories. So then we get into the whole 2-story issue.
May I?
Sure.
Thank you. I'd just like to add, I think directly to your question, sir. The allowable floor area for the 2 lots, if we end up taking the option of building 2 separate homes, would be 14,470, and the current home permits 10,187. As you merge it, the total permitted FAR actually goes down, so we're building 40% less than we would if we end up presenting a 2-home plan.
You're saying you can put 14,000 square foot of house on there and meet the setbacks?
In 2 homes. No, I'm just referring to FAR, to permitted floor area. Then we have to, of course, be restricted by the various wetland setbacks, front yard, rear yards, etc. But in terms of pure allowable square footage, which I believe was your question, if not, then.
No, understand the motivation of why I said what I did. Brent is using as an argument 1 house on 3 lots. 1 is sterilized, so it's really 1 house on 2 lots. And therefore, it's only 1 house instead of 2 houses. But what I'm deciphering from all these numbers is it's 1 house on 1 lot versus essentially the same size house broken in 2 pieces for the 2 houses. Bottom line is, I'm not convinced there is any more nitrogen loading by having single and separate houses, having 2 houses there. Because there are a lot of restrictions, setbacks in the wetlands, setback for the coastal hazard erosion line, and maybe other criteria. I don't see as that 14,000 as being a realistic number. That'd be pie in the sky, and I don't see how that can be built here. If you could build that, then you can certainly build this one with no trouble. But this doesn't meet the setbacks either.
Right, which is obviously where we're seeking the variances, and if we end up having to build 2 homes, we would have to come back and seek variances for that.
What I'm trying to do is not confuse the board with comparing things that really don't have a chance of being approved.
Understood. The other thing I'd like to mention is, it was mentioned earlier that we are not interested in redesigning the house, and I want to tell you, even though I guess I have to tell you to take my word for it because I don't have the various sketches that we've worked on. But we did. We've taken the time. We came back. You gave us some direction when we were here back in November or December, and we didn't simply go back and say, let's just come back next time and continue arguing the same point. We did look into it. We looked into building a 2-story home, and as Brent pointed out, we would be limited to, in this entire combination of 3 lots, we'd be limited to a very small amount of land relative to the whole lot, and build a house that starts 20 feet up in the air on piles and then rises 2 stories above that. And it's unsightly. It's not, it's hard to say it isn't livable. At the end of the day, it would be a home in Sagaponack, right? But it isn't anything that we are interested in building for the owner's personal use, right? So, but I have to tell you that we have been through many iterations of how to do that. We've also looked at, I believe one of the direction items you gave us was to focus more on pushing the home north of the coastal erosion band, and we tried to do that as well. And by moving the pool and deck into this area, and we still ended up being well into the 100-foot line, or between 75 and 100, and still ending up with a house that was difficult to access because we're close to the eastern boundary and having to come under the house and through all of those amenities to come into the house. So again, I ask you to take my word for it because I can't show you. I don't have sketches the way that we used to do in the old days on onion paper, right? Sheets and sheets of sketches. But we have looked at it and ended up deciding that if we can't build, and again, this would be subject to getting a variance for the coastal erosion line issue, which I think at the end of the day, at the last meeting, was one of the strongest objections to the present plan. And so that's something that we would have to seek from the village. We understand that. But the other options are not options that we're interested in building for a single family home. And we have for one home on the 3 lots. But again, we did look at it very seriously. We didn't just ignore the comments. Thank you.
Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. Again, I was not anticipating that we would have a lengthy hearing tonight, since the last hearing was considerable. There's significant information on record, and essentially the same information is being presented again. But this proposal is, of course, voluntary. It's in the applicant's interest to come forward with a plan for redevelopment. So, as was alluded to, we don't typically offer as a practical alternative that the existing homes be retained. Of course, it's the landowner's right to retain the existing homes. So if in the end that's what the landowner decides to do, that's fine. There's no issue with that. So you really can't weigh a redevelopment plan against continued use of the existing homes in order to evaluate practicable alternatives. I had offered that one of the options could be to build a 2-story home. I don't think that I ever expressed that that's the only practicable alternative for this site. What I try to do is I try to work with landowners to try and find a design plan that meets a lot of their needs. And if the landowner is only interested in a 1-story home, that's fine. There's no reason necessarily for the applicant to come forward with a plan for a 2-story residence. The representative for the landowner, Frank, he did touch on one of the areas that we had discussed at the prior hearing, which might offer some redesign possibilities. And that is, right now, a considerable portion of the house is essentially a roof over garage bay, where vehicles would be parked under this section of the house. So that's the reason why I had previously questioned the need to dedicate such a large area on the west side of the residence for parking and stairs. It seemed like there were better design options that would result in much more beneficial use of this area. Frank had touched on this, but one of the redesign suggestions that had been made at the last hearing was to look at utilizing this area as a pool and a patio area. This is the 100-foot setback from these wetlands. So recognizing that this that most of this portion of the structure is being dedicated for garage use, and you have an extensive drive in this area, there would certainly be an opportunity to build a pool and patio within that area, and yet also have perhaps additional decking associated with the home. That, of course, would not only achieve a greater setback, and in all likelihood a 100-foot setback from the wetlands, but it would also result in eliminating the encroachments seaward of the coastal erosion hazard area. So, there are yet opportunities to still go forward with a one-story home, but to make better use of this area here in order to achieve greater wetland setbacks and to avoid the need to get a variance from the Village of Sagaponack Coastal Erosion Hazard Board of Appeals. I had not, up to this point, I had not provided design sketches as part of this discussion because based upon discussion at the last hearing, I had well anticipated that the applicant was going to come back with a plan that further scaled back construction and made better use of this area. Since the applicant appears to have no interest in doing that, if it's beneficial to the board, we can adjourn the hearing and I can come back to the board with my own design sketches for this property. One of the things the village wetland law makes clear is that the evaluation of practical alternatives can't be just a general discussion. What the applicant needs to do is come forward with actual alternate drawings to scale so that the reasonability on part of this board to compare different options for this property. Yes, the plans that are before you are a modification of the original plans, but standing here tonight, we have no ability to compare an alternate plan that makes better use of this area for a pool and patio with the current plan, without actually having a drawing to scale to consider. So it would have been, notwithstanding that the applicant doesn't want to go forward with those design changes, it certainly would have been beneficial for the applicant to come forward tonight with alternate drawings to better enable the board to weigh the impacts of various designs. And as I do with many applications that come before this board, again, notwithstanding my recommendation that the hearing be closed tonight and that the application be denied, the hearing could be adjourned and I could come back with sketches that would show that there are yet practical alternatives that would better conform not only with the village wetlands law, but with also the village coastal erosion hazard area law. Thank you.
Mayor? So, thanks. Again, it's just an incorrect characterization to say for the second time that we're not interested in alternate designs. We have looked at alternate designs with architects that are highly successful professionals designing homes in the Hamptons, in Sagaponack, right? And and I've described what some of the designs look like. The reason why we are not presenting them here is because they're not designs that we are willing to build. We're not willing to spend tens of millions of dollars building this house and be tied to a design that might meet all of the conservation requirements that are being 100% of the ones that are being sought, yet tie us into an entry staircase that is a linear staircase, narrow staircase to get up to the house. It's just not gracious. It would be a colossal financial mistake to build a house in these beautiful lots. Again, the investment that would be required to build them, let alone what was required to buy the land, and end up with a highly compromised design that might make sense from a conservation engineering perspective, but absolutely no sense from an aesthetic perspective, a real estate investment perspective, or an architectural perspective. That's the reason why we didn't present them. Why come in with a design that we're simply not willing to go forward with? So it would be, again, appreciate the offer to have the house designed by Mr. Shea, but that's not a house that we're going to build. It's okay. We'll go back and we'll consider our options in terms of building 2 homes and selling them, doing it as an investment. But to build the wrong house, and again, it's a large home, but this is not nearly as large as many homes in the area. It's a 5-bedroom home. It's intended to be a family home. This is not, some sort of I don't know what to call it, but it's a 5-bedroom home with large gracious spaces. But that's what it is. It's a family home. So again, I have to tell you that we have looked at it very seriously. It's not right to say that we're not interested in looking at it. We did. We took the 3 months to look at it, and it just wasn't something that we are willing to invest in. Thank you.
I'm just going to make one point of clarification. We don't have to keep going back and forth about this, but I looked through the village regulations at length. I wanted to make sure I got this right. And nowhere does it say that we have to present plans to scale or an extravagant set of drawings to demonstrate our point. It simply states that we have to demonstrate that there are no practical alternatives which meet the standards. And then it talks about practical alternatives that meet the standards set forth in subsection A are presumed to be available unless the applicant clearly demonstrates otherwise. I ask you to consider that we tried to clearly demonstrate it. If the board needs more demonstration about the practical alternatives, I mean, we can go through the rigorous motions to actually give you design plans, and I'd have to spend more of my client's money to do that. But the reality is what we talked about already, that those practical alternatives have been looked at. And secondly, for Mr. Shea to say that looking at the existing homes as separate single family dwellings as not being part of the practical alternatives analysis is wrong. You have to consider the fact that these are single family residential lots that can be redeveloped. That is a practical alternative. That is obviously needing to be weighed when you think about SECRA, when you think about all of the environmental reviews out there. You absolutely have to take that into consideration. So, and then to Mr. Ludlow's other point, I think that it's also incorrect to not consider 2 sanitary systems versus 1. There is something to be said about having only one residential property providing effluent into this system. Again, that is part of the analysis that we would ask you also to consider.
What's the benefit?
The benefit of having
1 instead of 2.
So the health department calculates density based upon the occupancy of each lot. Each lot is allowed to have 300, not allowed, it's recognized as having 300 gallons per day of sanitary waste. When you go down to 1 single family residence, that's looked at as one lot. It's looked at as 300 gallons per day of sanitary flow waste. With 2 lots, it's 600 gallons per day of sanitary flow rate. I don't have the calculations in front of me in terms of the nitrogen loading associated with that, but there is a calculation that should be considered when you look at 2 sanitary systems and the amount of nitrogen loading they have into the groundwater versus 1. Now, again, that does depend on the size of the system, of course, and the number of bedrooms, but we're talking about a 5-bedroom home, which the health department looks at for a certain sizing of sanitary systems. And if you had 2 5-bedroom homes, that's double the occupancy. It's double the amount of effluent that's going into the groundwater. So I do ask you to take that in, as a heavy consideration when you're deliberating about this application.
I have a hard time approving that plan when it does not meet the setbacks. That's not the way I should phrase it. When it crosses the hazardous coastal erosion hazard line. A very big house on the dunes, and I got to sleep at night saying I couldn't come up with a better plan than that. But it's your call. What do you want to do with this application?
So, Mr. Chairman, I do appreciate your position, and I've been before you long enough to know that you're pretty steadfast in this position. I would ask you to also consider what I mentioned earlier on, is that this project will need a variance from the Village Zoning Board of Appeals for the improvements that we're seeking in the coastal erosion hazard area. They do not meet the 125-foot dune crest setbacks as well. So we do know that we will be before the village ZBA. And this board can very well issue this permit conditioned upon us getting that ZBA variance for those improvements. And we'd ask you to consider that. You don't have to make the decision fully by yourself.
Historically, the village has looked on us to make a decision first before they grapple with it. The way I interpret that is that our decision will weigh heavily on what they do. So granted, that's what you would have to do, but when we make a decision, we're authenticating that encroachment. I don't want to send that message to the village. And the law calls for looking for alternative plans. I've not seen a single alternative plan. And you don't seem to want to present an alternative plan. I'm not behind you on this. We'll close it if you want to. I don't think you're going to be happy with the result.
Can you give me 1 second?
Sure.
Sorry, thank you for giving me that minute. I feel like we've made the best presentation we can to support the project. And I feel like unless there's any further questions, we would ask for you to close the hearing and schedule it for, as much as I want to try to find a solution with you, I feel like that's where we have to be.
If I could just add to that for a second.
I want to make the record perfectly clear that the board has asked for alternative plans at the last meeting, again at this meeting. None have come forth, and you haven't been willing to show us any. You said there are some, and you've asked me to take your word for it. I'm not saying there aren't any, but the board has not seen any. The law calls for us to ask for alternative plans. We're doing what the law calls for us to do, and then we have to make a decision when the results are insufficient. I'm not sure there's a single time when this scenario has played out when we've approved a plan, when we had no alternatives. So I just want to be clear that, so that you're not surprised at the end where this is headed.
Can I? Yeah, excuse me. My question would be, so again, we have looked at plans. I described the plan, in particular that we looked at, where the pool moved to this area here, and we were not satisfied at all with that plan. So I'm just trying to understand what the process would be like, because this is at least my first time in front of this board. We present a plan today. It still requires several variances from the wetland setbacks. And we present a plan that we are completely unwilling to build. But you say that's the one that I like. And we're now faced with the position of saying, thanks very much, but what's the process? Thank you, but please deny the application, or we'll take the application acceptance, but we'll throw it out because that's not the house we want to build, and we're going to come back with a two-house plan. I'm just not understanding what the end game is if we present
I would
those
suggest that if you are not happy with, if you are not going to build according to the plan that you present to us, you shouldn't present it to us.
Right,
I agree with you on that.
right.
They have three member size, we can't.
Oh,
He says wait till George comes back.
okay. We're going to pause for our station identification.
Okay.
Yeah, we need a quorum of 4
I
people.
understand.
Zeb need to recuse himself, and George is out for a couple of minutes, but we'll take a break.
Okay.
7th inning stretch.
And please, I'm not trying to be argumentative for the sake of being argumentative. I'm just really trying to understand what the end game is
Yeah,
and
I'll,
not waste your time.
and I'll give you a response, but we can't
Yeah.
do anything more
Okay.
until.
Sounds good.
We're still being recorded, I presume. Keep us accountable.
Yeah, he's trying to.
Is there a water fountain out there?
No.
No, there's no running water.
You can go
The
to
bathrooms are down, right?
our office and.
We should work on having better water here.
Time for some serious upgrades.
Yeah.
That's okay, I'll suffer. 1, 2, 3, 4. We have a quorum again. That's exciting. Did you, Frank, right?
Yes.
Did you finish what you were going to say? Because I was going to say something.
Yeah, it
too.
was really more a question to
Okay.
understand the end
Let me-
game. Than,
I would like to just share a different perspective,
Mhm.
one from this side of the table, and I'll admit that's easier than your side of the table. But from this side of the table, we're looking at a large piece of real estate that, in spite of being a large piece of real estate, is highly constrained. Because of the regulations, the setback requirements, the testimony already has been, you've got a little triangle in the middle that meets all the setback requirements. You cannot meet all the setback requirements. So that's one reason why we look at the alternative options to see what can work and what, we got to give and take. This line on the dunes is an important one. It may be we need to infringe on some other line. I don't know the answer to that yet because I haven't seen them. But we're looking at a highly constrained lot with a very large house and other amenities that aren't necessarily the constitutional right to build. There is a right to build a house. I'm not suggesting you can't build it, don't get me wrong. But I just want to share another perspective that we're seeing this large lot that's highly constrained with a less than highly constrained house being built on it, and we're asked to make a decision, and it doesn't work.
I understand. I appreciate the explanation or the bringing your perspective into it. I fully appreciate it, and I just want to make sure that you understand because we've met 3 times, and one was to say that we didn't have a quorum. So really 2 times we've actually had, substantive conversations. This plan has gone through 3 years of studies and revisions and many changes in response to Mr. Shea's input. And so those are on the record. Those alternatives are on the record. The previous designs are on the record. They were submitted before. And this is, again, a response to several iterations of changes. And so I understand what you're saying in terms of having to try to fit within all of these restrictions. And we've also done that, right? Because that's why I'm not here presenting alone, and we've hired people like Nelson and Poe Brandt and his firm in the architecture firm to tell us what it is that we need to do in order to compromise among the needs of all of the different agencies that have jurisdiction over the project, be it the zoning board, your own board, et cetera. And we also had to play with that puzzle, right? And as an example, when we looked at moving this house fully north of the coastal erosion line, we were faced with violating the front setback, right? And so at one point we said, okay, we'll ask for a variance from the ZBA. We realized that wasn't a viable alternative. And so we turned this leg of the house, which used to be just one line, in line, we flipped it to move the pool north as much as we can while changing this design. So that's also on the record. So that's also an alternative design that has been introduced in the past. Et cetera, et cetera. I'm just trying to let you know that I fully understand. I believe that I understand your position. I don't sit here every month, of course, but I understand your position. And we've been advised by people professionals that have been in front of you on a regular basis. And so what we're asking for now is that we don't want to build a 2-story home. We don't want to have a house that's sitting 20 feet up in the air, and then it goes another 28 feet, 20, however it might be, right, above. I think it's going to be an eyesore. There are other examples of homes in the area that are that high that I don't think are the best examples aesthetic integrity or something that neighbors really want to drive by and look at. So that's also something that we've taken into consideration. We're building a house here that is going to be very it won't be an eyesore. Would be unobtrusive to the passerby, and so we also are playing with all these factors and they're trying to get to a point where to make everybody happy, right? But making everybody happy has to also include the owner's position if he's going to build a house that he wants to live in. And if not, like I said, then it becomes a different calculus, right? And it becomes, what do I do with the two existing homes that are there, that they're renting out? Do they, at some point, do they monetize that and they sell them as is? Do they rebuild them and sell them as certainly that would be the highest and best use of the land, right? To redevelop those homes separately. And so we've honestly gone through an exhaustive process over 3 years with many alternate designs that have been reviewed, that are on the record, and at the end of the day, I think it becomes a little bit of, are we presenting this in good faith or not, right? Again, I don't think that it's helpful to come back with a design that tries to design it the way that Mr. Shea described, which is something that we certainly looked at, because why not? If we think that here now we have a path, why wouldn't we look at it? And it's not something that we're willing to build, so why waste your time presenting something that wouldn't be a...
But also, all Marty did was suggest a design that meets the code, and you're asking us to build a house that doesn't meet the code.
Right, I can't build a house that meets every section of the code. That's a baseline assumption. That's a baseline statement that I can give. We cannot build a house that meets all sections of the code. We're here because we know that we needed some variances, and we have to go in front of the zoning board, the village zoning board, for other variances. And the question is, how does that puzzle fit? And we really think that what we're presenting here maximizes the benefit to, with all due respect, as I'm not the conservation board, maximizes the benefit to the environmental concerns, but at the same time allows us to build a house that is financially viable, that is economically viable, that is viable from a zoning approvals perspective, and a house that the owner wants to live in.
I would like to make a motion.
Close.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're asking us to close the hearing?
Yes.
Anybody else want to offer anything? I have nothing further to say. I kind of gave you my perspective. And I can appreciate your position, what you're saying. But it's a difficult lot. Do you want to say anything else, Brent?
I just want to say thank you for your time. I know this is never fun to do, but I do appreciate everything that this board does try to do. And I don't stand up here often for a reason. Marty can attest to this. I try to avoid this location. This is one of those situations where I felt it was worthy for us to make our pitch to this board, to give considerations based upon the merits of this application and the standards of the village wetland regulations. So with that, again, I do thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to all of us and reviewing our materials. Thank you again. And thank you for Marty's report too.
Thank you. And just one last, before we part, when I look at that, I actually think it's fairly close. There is a problem going so close in the dunes. And it just seems like just push that back a little bit, and we got a plan.
So,
But
right, and And we heard you say that also the previous time. We fully appreciate that that was a major concern. It's so tough. It seems like such a big lot, and yet there are so many restrictions that it proves to be much more difficult than it might seem. I left that meeting last time feeling really positive about our ability to redesign. The next day, I started sketching potential redesigns and asked the architect to actually put it on CAD and get true measurements and try to figure out if it really fit. We really worked at it, and unfortunately, it didn't work, and for the reasons I mentioned before. And I guess the only other thing that I maybe wasn't mentioned before that I'd like to point out, though, is, and I get the point about maybe it doesn't matter what's there now, but we are, if I believe the ratio, if I remember correctly, but I can get it, we are reducing the amount of structure that is seaward of the coastal erosion band
That's in the record.
by about 50%.
Mhm.
So, yes, we're not eliminating it 100%, and we are suggesting that if it's approved, that it's approved subject to the zoning board, which would have to ultimately give a variance for that. But we are improving significantly from the existing conditions, so we'd like you to please consider that, or ask you to please consider.
Okay, it has been requested that we close the public hearing. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Sunshine second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Advisory reports for the ZBA, Elira Hoffman and Stephen Hartigan.
Thank you.
Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. The Hoffman and Hardigan plan relates to an existing residentially developed property on Cove Road in the hamlet of North Sea. There are three recommended brief advisory comments. The first is that, as reported by the applicant, construction of the planned swimming pool, for which a variance is being sought, has already been authorized pursuant to Conservation Board Wetland Permit number CD 24058, and that permit was issued on December 18, 2023. The second comment notes that the survey that was filed with the pending application is consistent with the survey that was approved by this board pursuant to such wetland permit. And the last comment offers that there are no significant environmental concerns regarding the planned swimming pool, as the impacts of the construction would be sufficiently offset by establishment of restored wetland preservation area, as well as a naturally vegetated wetland, non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer, which are depicted on the applicant's survey.
Motion to send those comments to the ZBA.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Michael W. Sonnenfeld.
This is a pending variance application for residentially developed property at the intersection of Mecox Road and Ocean Road. The variance application has been made for several reasons. One is because the construction plans that were approved by this board necessitate dimensional setback relief. The advisory report is supportive of the granting of the dimensional setback relief for the construction plans that were wetland permitted by this board. But the second more difficult part of the variance application is that the plan that was approved by this board calls for installation of 6-foot-high fence lines in required front yards, both along Mecox Road and Ocean Road. So the large body of this draft advisory report comments on that latter part of the application that seeks relief for 6-foot fences. I would offer that in the event that the zoning board grants necessary relief to put 6-foot-high fences in the required front yards, that would likely set significant precedents for this town, since 6-foot-high fence lines are not permitted in any residential zones townwide. That being said, the comments that are offered are first that a February 5, 2025 Environment Division field assessment has revealed that the unauthorized front yard roadside parallel fence lines, inclusive of the illegal deer fence, and that would be existing fence in excess of 6 feet, are yet standing and have neither been removed nor reduced in height despite repeated notices of violation provided to the applicant dating back to 2016. Now, the board did not legalize those 8-foot fences. This comment is just speaking to the current site conditions and the history of unauthorized fences. The second comment indicates that the same site visit had also confirmed that both the existing and proposed non-compliant fences continue to pose grave risk of injury and mortality to deer, as evidenced by an observed dead deer which recently succumbed within the bounds of the subject property adjacent to heavily trampled, damaged fence strewn with significant amounts of deer hair. Our presence at the property had also startled a second trapped live deer which attempted to jump the high fence, but fortunately escaped without injury through the unfenced southerly part of the lot. The third comment offers that, notwithstanding any discussions that may have been had at both recent ZBA and Conservation Board public hearings regarding a, quote, pilot, end of quote, fence / wildlife injury mortality risk study that had been proposed by the applicant, none of these actions were integrated into the Conservation Board wetland permit number CB 23056, which was issued on October 2nd, 2023, as the proposal was non-science-based and its scope and intent could not be rationally explained or technically supported. Moreover, there is little or no evidence on record that the applicant has since voluntarily completed field investigations or provided field observation data sheets or notes attesting to the results of subsequent monitoring of fence wildlife interactions or incidents of wildlife injury or mortality, notwithstanding the commitment that had been made by the applicant to undertake such pilot study at the Conservation Board public hearing. Fourth, the proposed 6 feet high fence line within the required front yard is neither necessary nor mandated as a condition of the wetland permitted residential improvements at the property. Fifth, the applicant has not demonstrated that a significant economic loss will occur to the subject residentially developed property or to agricultural crops if the requested unprecedented variance for the proposed deer exclusion fences is not granted. 6, deer fences as well as parallel fence lines without gaps at road intersections adjacent to natural open space disrupt animal movement and road crossing and leave no escape opportunities for deer corralled along fence lines, thereby increasing the likelihood of deer vehicle collisions. And lastly, the comment is made consistent with my introduction that the Conservation Board has no significant concerns regarding the rear yard setback and pyramid variances which are being sought for the planned residential building activities, as such improvements have already been authorized by wetland permit CB 23056 and the subsequent modified wetlands permit as well.
Motion to send those comments to the ZBA.
Wait,
Go ahead.
Marty, I have a couple of concerns. I'm a little bit confused.
Sure.
We had a meeting and a lot of discussion, and all of the concerns that you've written up here, we all felt them. We didn't want it to become a precedent. A 6-foot fence, especially at a busy intersection, is not something you want to set a precedent. But I thought we had established not a pilot study, but a pilot program, and we were trying to be very careful to term it as a pilot to see if it worked. And that doesn't seem to be being described.
The applicant never came forward with a detailed proposal that could reasonably be integrated into your resolution of conditional and the wetland permit. The offer was made, but I never saw an actual.
We did. No.
I should mention that I had to take my wife to the hospital to emergency that night when you had the public hearing. So I was not present for that hearing. However, I had previously raised concerns regarding the applicant's proposal to install a 6 feet high deer fence. Teresa Mason, who you know has now transferred to planning, she spoke at that hearing. And I, of course, met with her, and based on the feedback I got from Teresa, went forward with draft conditional approval that the board acted on and then issued a permit. So the permit does allow for those, it allows for parallel fence lines. There are several things that permit did. Number one, it allowed the landowner to reconfigure the pre-existing covenanted wetland preservation and natural vegetated buffer, because there was some concern about permitting fence lines within a buffer. So the scope of the pre-existing covenanted area was pulled back from Mecox Road and Ocean Road, and then the board elected to allow for parallel fence lines, one only 4 feet high and the second one 6 feet high with a hedge line. Had apparently shown some interest in the applicant's offer to undertake a pilot study to look at the risk of injury or mortality to deer and other wildlife as a result of fencing. But after the close of the hearing, the applicant never came forward with anything solid that I could reasonably integrate into your conditional approval.
What this looks like is a report by Teresa. This is her language that she spoke about at the public hearing. Unfortunately, she's not the board. The board said something very different. This really should not be there because this is not the feeling of the board. And the idea was that the pilot program begins when the fence is built. The fence has not been built. The pilot program has not begun. So I would not expect to see any reports yet. And Daphne is still trying to get ZBA approval for the fence, so they can't build the fence yet. So we got the cart before the horse.
Understand what this is and what it is not is. What this is, of course, is a draft advisory.
Right, so we want to
for
change.
your consideration.
Right, and we hear it, thank you for that. We want to change
You
that.
as the board decide what that advisory report should say. That being said, as a consequence of getting the referral, my office did a field investigation, and these were our observations. And we have not yet, as of this date, received any feedback from the landowner with regards to the apparent discussion as far as undertaking a pilot study and bringing back to this board field data in terms of whether or not there were incidents of wildlife mortality. We observed when we went to the property an incidence of deer mortality that, based on all the physical evidence, seemed to have been caused by the existing fence line. But I'm just reporting back on my observations, making a recommendation, and of course, the board should decide what they want the report to say and not to say, and I'm prepared to amend the advisory report as the board so wishes. So what I need, though, is I need guidance as to what you want the advisory report to say. Could be simple. It could just indicate that it could just confirm that the fence lines that the applicant is seeking a variance for were permitted by this board on such a date and as depicted on the approved survey, and not offer any additional dialogue.
Well, I think we thought it was very important to term it as a pilot program so that we were not married to it. If it did not work, we could withdraw the approval. And we knew that, we could be setting a precedent, and it could be a very bad precedent. We took all of your concerns into account, and I think we discussed it at great length, and then came up, and that's why when I saw study and you haven't gotten any data back, that can't happen until the fence goes up. And then we did want to see data, and we did want to see a result. Would this work, or maybe it doesn't? But we did not want to set a precedent.
But recognize in the interim, there is an 8-foot high deer fence there right now that, as indicated by these advisory comments, dates back to at least 2016, and that the landowner has been repeatedly noticed that that fence is non-compliant, and at the very least, it needs to reduce the height. So, cognizant of the applicant's unwillingness to reduce the height of the current fence, notwithstanding the permit that you issued, you would think that the applicant would offer to commence a pilot study and provide feedback to our office. That has not happened.
This letter is part of what that commencing is. This has to come first, because they can't build the fence yet.
Okay.
They don't have the permits to build the fence yet. They've got our permit, which is only one of others. So.
Okay, so the letter could be rewritten to say exactly that. But my first question is, do you believe that the advisory report should report that there's a non-compliant 8-foot-high fence there that's been in violation of the wetland law and building and zoning code since 2016? Or should the presence of that fence be ignored?
Has the applicant received a notice of violation?
Yes,
You're sure of that?
yes.
I don't have a strong feeling one way or another on that. That's fine. But,
So I can leave that comment in. I
Yeah.
can leave the comment that, of course, is supportive of granting the pyramid and dimensional setback relief for the construction, which
Yeah.
obviously you have no issue with that.
number 7.
And then I will rewrite it to, consistent with the comments, to say that the board was looking for the pilot study to commence upon installation of the fence, and that fence installation
Well, I
has
think-
not occurred yet because a variance is needed from the
Well,
zoning.
I would like to see something a little bit different. You can leave number 1 in and leave number 7. You have to leave 7. That's very important for the report. But 2 through 6, I think, should be deleted. But in the first part, the concept that the thrust of what the Conservation Board spent a lot of time discussing was the concept of we're looking for a possible way to help owners protect their land in a legal way from deer intrusion when the population is too high. Now, this is too many words, so just get the concept. We're looking for, and the pilot program is okay, but the pilot program is for us to justify our doing it so we don't have applications coming in, we're gonna do the same thing. Because this is very special, we're looking at it, this is a one-time thing. The ZBA has other concerns, and they see it as a precedent, and I don't think they care if it's a pilot program or not, because they've got other concerns, and they've got to do what they want to do. But the concept that is important, I believe, to present here is that this board, in approving this fence, and you did good words on that we approved a parallel fence. In doing that, the purpose was to experiment and search for a viable way to protect properties from deer damage. And that's why, that's the thrust behind why we did this. And all the rest of that probably shouldn't be there because that's confusing and not particularly, it's not completely accurate for some of those things. And I don't think it's beneficial to the ZBA either.
So let me offer something. How about if I say something to the effect that the Conservation Board has an interest in researching and evaluating fence options which would both protect residential property from deer damage, yet minimize risk of injury and mortality to wildlife. Is that
That's a
is that a
concept, yeah.
fair
Yeah.
statement?
Yeah. And the purpose of putting that in there is that while this may not be approved by the ZBA, we want the ZBA to know that the concept remains. And this may not be the best way to deal with it. We don't know. But we're trying something.
So then I would continue on by in that regard, the board permitted parallel lines of 4-foot and 6-foot fencing condition upon the landowner getting the necessary variances from the zoning board, and then go on to say that the requested pilot study would commend pond fence installation in the event that that relief is granted. I had something to that effect.
What,
And what I can do here is I can draft, it's probably best for me to draft an amended advisory report and then come back to you at the next meeting with that.
do we have time for that?
Yes,
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great.
okay. And then what I can do is I can share that with board members prior to the meeting.
Yeah.
Or should I just wait for the,
No, email it out to us.
is that appropriate?
That's fine, yeah.
Okay, so should I then be communicating back and forth with board members about any further suggested amendments prior to the meeting, or just circulate the draft and then have our discussion at the next meeting?
Circulate the draft and then have the discussion
Okay,
at the next
all right,
meeting.
all right, that works. All right, thank you.
So we won't take any action on sending that to the ZBA yet. So the next application is Eric Grave and Carola M. Grave.
All right, this is an existing developed property that has bulkheaded frontage in the hamlet of Shinnecock Hills at Rebadam Lane. There are two recommended comments. First is that although the planned residential front entry, stone driveway, water and gas service lines, and sanitary system are located beyond the town's wetland permitting jurisdiction, the planned elevated deck and steps, intended French drain, an elevation of the existing house, as well as a proposed garage addition for which front yard, side yard, and lot coverage variance being sought need a wetland permit. The requisite Conservation Board wetland permit application has not yet been filed. Second, consistent with Conservation Board wetland protection standards for canal fronting homes where the shoreline is marked by at least 100 linear feet of functional bulkhead, the proposed naturally vegetated wetland non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer would need to be increased to a minimum of 21.7 feet landward of the bulkhead in order for the project plans to be approved.
Motion to send these comments.
Second?
All in favor?
Right.
Opposed? 2832 Bittersweet Lane, Noyak.
This pending variance application relates to a large residential development project that was permitted by this board at Bittersweet Lane in the hamlet of Noyak. There are two suggested comments. First is, as indicated by the applicant, planned construction activities for which relief is being sought have already been authorized by the Conservation Board pursuant to wetland permit number CB 24039, which was issued on June 18, 2024. Second comment indicates that the survey which has been filed with the pending variance application is consistent with the project plans approved by the Conservation Board.
Motion to send those comments to the ZBA.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 15 Rogers Lane LLC.
This variance application relates to property of Rogers Lane in Luxembourg, Spion. Suggested comments are as follows. First, indicates that the proposed residential covered front porch is located greater than 200 feet landward of the nearest town regulated freshwater wetlands. As such, a town wetlands permit is not needed in order to proceed with construction. Second comment indicates that while the planned northerly residential addition is not the subject of the pending variance application. The applicant is advised that any town approval of this residential expansion as depicted on the survey accepted for the front porch addition would necessitate installation of an innovative alternative on-site wastewater treatment system pursuant to section 123-52, as the addition represents an increase of 25% or more in the floor area of the home within the town high-priority water quality improvement zone. As such, the intended sanitary upgrade needs to be shown on the survey.
Motion to send those comments to the ZBA.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Michael and Rosa Federico.
This pending variance application relates to residentially developed property at Inlet Road West in Shinnecock Hills that has a history of approvals by this board. First comment indicates the proposed construction activities for which variances are being sought have generally been authorized by the Conservation Board pursuant to modified wetland permit number CB 17043 with an issuance date of December 9, 2024. Second, additionally, the survey which was filed with the pending variance application is in large part consistent with the survey which was approved by the Conservation Board on June 3rd, 2024. However, due to additional project changes, most notably building of an elevated paver patio rather than deck, reconfiguration of the home, construction of a balcony above paver patio, and redesign of the sanitary system, subsurface drainage, impervious driveway, an additional modified wetland permit will be needed.
Motion to send those comments to the ZBA.
All in favor? Opposed? The administrative wetland permits are in your packets. Resolution conditional approval, A 022054, Paul Basic and Lisa Gallo. Any discussion?
Move to issue.
Second.
Resolved that a conditional wetland permit approval be granted to Paul Basic and Lisa Gallo for the proposed project upon the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 023056, 258 Horse Mill Lane, LLC. Any discussion?
Second.
Resolved that a conditional wetland permit be granted to 258 Horse Mill Lane, LLC for the proposed project upon the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 024030, 78 Harbor Watch LLC. This is postponed to February 26, 2025. Is there a motion?
Motion to postpone to February 26, 2025.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? A 024011, Elizabeth Kelly. Any discussion?
Second.
Resolved that a conditional wetland permit be granted to Elizabeth Kelly for the proposed project upon the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 024066, David Mopin and Stefano Tonchi. Any discussion?
Second.
Resolved that a conditional wetland permit be granted to David Mopin and Stephanie Tonchi for the proposed project upon the terms and conditions set forth therein. This is pursuant to Chapter 225 of the Code of the Village of Sagaponack. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Preliminary review of signature determination, A 024002, 31 Marlin LLC.
This application relates to a residentially developed lot with bulkheaded frontage on an interior canal in the private community of Shinnecock Shores. There is a preliminary advisory report dated January 30, 2025. As indicated by the report, the application has been made in order to legalize residential improvements that were formally approved pursuant to an expired Conservation Board wetland permit and conditional approval of modified wetland permit. So the application is being made to seek reapproval of the same activities as well as to legalize subsequent modifications in construction. The applicant has restored the majority of the required buffer. There is additional buffer land that needs to be vegetated as the configuration of the buffer is regular, although it's what the applicant formally proposed and what the board was satisfied with. I offered as an alternate more linear buffer that could be better managed. The applicant has decided not to go with the linear buffer and to stick with the former concept that was brought before this board. There are some minor areas of decking and stairs that, contrary to the conditions of the wetland permit, were built with treated wood. The applicant has agreed to disassemble those portions and replace them with untreated wood. So this is an application for which we have sufficient information to make a determination as such, recommending that the hearing requirement be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing.
Second?
Resolved that, excuse me. Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 024041, JL Southampton LLC.
This application relates to a residentially developed property, 55 East Shore Road in North Sea, with frontage on the Little Peconic Bay. There is a preliminary advisory report on file dated February 4, 2024. This is the former Jeanette Magnuson property, which is marked by a court-ordered 6-foot-high concrete seawall along the beach. The abutting property owner decided to buy this developed property and would like to demolish the existing home and proceed with accessory improvements to benefit their adjacent existing home. Those improvements include various multi-level patios, detached garage, pool house. They are amenable to establishing a 20-foot wide covenanted naturally vegetated buffer landward of the seawall, which I had recommended early on. So the required covenant will be filed. They will put forward the necessary revegetation plan. This is an application for where we have sufficient information to make a determination as such, recommending that the hearing requirement be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing.
Second?
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 024044, Bradley A. Edgar and Lauren D. Edgar.
This is a residentially developed lot on White Oak Lane in the hamlet of West Hampton. There is a preliminary advisory report on file dated February 3rd, 2005. The property recently sold, and the applicant is seeking approval on a wetlands permit from this board in order to complete various residential improvements. There are also activities that were completed by the prior landowner without requisite wetland permits to be legalized. The property backs on an ephemeral stream, and town-regulated and state-regulated freshwater wetlands, consistent with the permit that was issued to the adjacent landowner to the west. Although the applicant initially offered a 15-foot buffer, I asked that that be expanded to 30 feet, that the existing unauthorized fence line be relocated to the landward boundary of the buffer. The applicant is amenable to those recommendations and will covenant the area and come forward with a revised revegetation plan. As such, we have sufficient information to make a determination accordingly, recommending that the public hearing requirement be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing.
Second.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A024045, Merrick Properties LLC.
This is a large developed lot, which has located frontage on Myers Pond, also known as Bernard's Creek, and Watermill. There is a preliminary advisory report filed dated January 27, 2025. The application has been made because the property is being sold and the buyer would like to redevelop the property, demolish and remove all the existing improvements and construct a new home. There are interior freshwater wetlands landward of the bulkhead. I did put forward a plan for preservation of those interior wetlands and recommended naturally vegetative buffers that would be covenanted in a manner that's consistent with our recent decision on the abutting property to the east. The applicant is amenable to those recommendations. We'll come forward with necessary revised surveys, covenants, and revegetation specifications for those areas. I also ask that certain mature trees on the property be protected. Those are identified on my sketch and partly on the existing survey. The applicant has agreed to do that as well. As such, we have sufficient information to make a determination, and the public hearing requirement can be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A024065, 191 Highland Terrace LLC.
This is a new application for a vacant flag lot. It's a large lot. It takes in 3.4 acres. It has frontage on Segponic Pond in the hamlet of Bridgehampton. There is a preliminary advisory report on file dated February 11, 2025. So the plans call for a building of a large home, pool, patio, lots of hardscape and accessory improvements, and IA, of course, would be installed. The plans appear to be wholly compliant in terms of the required wetland construction setbacks, with the exception that the buffer is required by the subdivision as well as the planning board mandated construction. Setbacks still need to be overlaid on the plan. If they're more stringent, the plan may need to be adjusted slightly. While there are no issues with regards to the proposed construction, as indicated by my advisory report, the applicant is looking to bring a tremendous amount of fill to this property. That fill would far exceed 3,000 cubic yards. And while we always permit fill placement and grade changes for septic system installation, the remainder of the fill appears to be wholly unnecessary at this property. That being said, although the applicant had prefaced their application by indicating that they were making application to this board to get relief for the fill, I had, through issuance of a notice of incomplete application, again tried to encourage the applicant to scale back the amount of fill so that I could expedite issuance of an administrative wetland permit. However, the applicant doesn't want to do that, wants to go to a hearing and make a case for bringing all this to the property. So the report also provides a lot of information in terms of the characteristic of this area and its relation to the floodplain and overall ecosystem of Sag Pond. So consistent with the applicant's wishes, there is a resolution before you to schedule a public hearing for this application.
Motion to schedule a public hearing for April 9th, 2025.
Second.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby schedules the public hearing for April 9th, 2025, and the notice of public hearing be published in the Town Gazette newspaper pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 225-8C of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution additional modification, CB 18025, Rolling Wood Real Estate LLC.
So this is a property on the bayside of Dune Road in Bridgehampton. The board had issued a permit to allow for residential redevelopment. The former home has since been demolished. Pilings being installed, or in the process of being installed for the new house. As a result of communications with the Suffolk County Department of Health Services, they found that they had to change the configuration of the IAOWTS and also saw the need for additional subsurface drainage. So the resolution before you for approval would allow for issuance of a modified wetland permit authorizing those changes to the septic system layout and allowing for the additional drainage. All other conditions and mitigative measures as advanced by this board would be adhered to.
Motion to issue modification.
Second.
Resolved that a wetlands permit modification be issued to Rolling Woods Real Estate LLC for the proposed project upon the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? CB 24040, Eric Belfi and Tara Belfi.
This modification application relates to a property that is residentially developed property that is being redeveloped, Cold Spring Point Road in the hamlet of Tuckahoe. The approved project plans and permit were the consequence of very extensive communications back and forth with the applicant that called for detailed evaluation of practicable alternatives, notwithstanding the issuance of the permit because of the risk of flooding in this area. The applicant filed a building permit application that called for installation of pilings, even though the plans that were approved by this board called for a poured concrete foundation with hydrostatic flood vents. So this is simply a request for a modified wetland permit that would allow the applicant to go forward with the same plan, but to install FEMA compliant pilings rather than build a poured concrete foundation.
Motion issue the modification.
Resolved that a wetlands permit modification be issued to Eric Belfi and Tara Belfi for the proposed project within the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you all.